This does not mean you have to be a suck up. This does not mean you have to be inauthentic. This does not mean you're being fake. It means you're being strategic. Okay, so your relationship has to exist beyond your own team. And without your network, you're going to fail. Nobody is going to represent you in that room. You're going to get 3s across the board, meets expectations forever. You're never going to need a raise. You're never going to need a promotion. And you're going to be constantly frustrated as to why. And the reason is that you do not have relationships in that room who are advocating for you. That's what it comes down to.
Welcome back to Secrets of a Corporate Game. So many people are trying to navigate a corporate world that is laden with secrets, cleverly hidden and unspoken rules to a game that most employees don't even know they're playing. On this podcast, we try to give you a peek behind the curtain and unveil some of those secrets with tips and tricks that you can apply today to start taking control of your career and progress up the ladder faster.
Welcome back. Today we are talking about one of my absolute favorite topics, which is why networking is so important. So if you follow along on my social media at all, over the last few weeks, months, I've really been talking about the jumps that you can make in your career. And when we think of your career, there's really 4 big jumps. So there's fresh out of college, the first jump. This is learning technical acumen. This is learning to do your job. This is learning to meet deadlines. That's kind of the first stage of your career. And maybe your education prior to that supported it if you do something like engineering, data science, data analytics, development, marketing, but maybe it didn't. And maybe this is your first time. So that's kind of the first stage that you learn your skills. The second stage that you develop is really your social skills. So this is what allows you to become a high-performing technical individual. So this could include things as basic as meeting, calendar, email etiquette, right? Are we scheduling over people's meetings? Are we waiting an appropriate amount of time to follow up on emails? Are we following up on emails? Are we setting deadlines? But it also includes the social aspect of building relationships with your team and beyond your team. And that's where we're going to spend a lot of time talking today, is when you're building these social skills, a big component of that is how do you network? How do you build relationships that are going to progress your career forward long term? The third big jump that we make in our careers is the leadership management track. So this is maybe not even when you first get promoted to a manager, but when you start becoming a senior manager, director, moving up the chain, you need to be able to establish really strong leadership and managerial skills. This is going to allow you to scale. This is going to allow you to grow. This is going to allow you to manage teams effectively, recruit effectively, retain effectively. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. Because even if you can master the first 2 skills, you can learn the technical acumen and the social skills to support it, managing people is completely different. And nobody ever trains you in that. So we could do a whole separate episode on that. Maybe we will in the future. And then the 4th jump is strategic vision and strategy. So when you think of how you're growing your skills, the best leaders at the top of a company, maybe they don't have the strongest technical acumen, especially if it's been a while since they did that technical job. The tools are likely different. The requirements are different. The way it's digested is different, especially in a technology age where things are evolving so rapidly. They have to maintain the good social skills. They still have to be a good manager and leader. But what allows them to get to those upper levels of leadership, that upper executive band, is that they are able to inspire and motivate a group of people. Now, we've all worked for an executive that we think like, how did they get there? Not inspiring, not motivating, right? So obviously this isn't 100% followed, but a lot of the time those people are great at motivating and inspiring people above and around them. So maybe that doesn't trickle down to their team, but it does influence the other executives in the company. And that's why they get to that level. Doesn't mean they survive there. That's how they get there. So when we think of how you're evolving your skills over the course of your career, as you continue to move up, it's important to also have a mindset on self-development, self-investment, self-progression. So technical acumen, you should be learning this first stage from peers. So this is a mentor who's one level higher from you. This is investing in certifications. This is your degree. This is spending a lot of time with your coworkers, understanding how they do things side by sides, right? These are all really impactful ways to build technical acumen. But social skills, who do you ask? Who do you go to if you're realizing that your ability to do your job is great, but your ability to do your job effectively with other people is not where it needs to be? This is a really hard area of coaching for most managers. They don't have this skill to coach this ability. If they've learned it, it was very intrinsic for them. Some of them haven't learned it, separate issue. So if we think of how are you going to build your social skills, there are a few key things that you need to be doing that's going to allow you to continue that growth, to continue making it up these 4 jumps. So the first thing is email, meeting, written communication etiquette. Okay. Don't schedule meetings over people's meetings. I don't feel like I should have to say that, but I'm saying it because people do it all the time and I don't get it. Okay. So you can see in Outlook, if you go to make a meeting, if you go to scheduling, you can see everybody's calendar, pick an open spot. If there are no open spots, email them. Hey, there are no open spots in your calendar. Here's some that work for me. Which one's best for you? Learning basic meeting etiquette to me feels paramount at this point in our society. So learn basic email etiquette and meeting etiquette. Second is how do you write your email? So I've talked about this a lot on my social media. People always get a kick out of this, but I found that this is really, really helpful for most people. So when you write an email, you should be following a template that says arse. Any of my listeners in the UK find that especially funny. But the A is going to stand for acknowledge. Whether you are writing an email or you are responding to an email, the first thing you're going to do is acknowledge the other person. Hey, thanks so much for reaching out. Hey, I heard you're being looped in on this project. Hey, I really appreciate this thing you did for me. Hey, you're really great at this. I thought I'd ask you. Maybe you can point me in the right direction if you're not the right person. Some type of acknowledgement that says like, I am coming to you with an appreciation of what you are doing for me. This is the first step people miss. We think, oh, I'm just going to send them the question. It'll be easy. If you do that often enough, you will build a reputation that people won't like you, even though it's just an email and it's just one question and we're trying to be efficient. Take the time, acknowledge the person. Second thing is you are going to restate the problem. So if they have reached out to you asking for something, you're going to restate in your own words what you think they're looking for. They said, hey, can I have the data on new hires? And you're going to say, thanks so much for reaching out, Steve. Just to be clear, you want the information on new hires in our organization over the last 6 months. Great. Now we're getting more specific. Hey, here's the assumptions I've made around what you asked for. Here's the data I'm assuming you need. If you're asking, this is when you're going to state what you need. Or if you're giving an update, hey guys, thanks so much for being on the call earlier today. As a follow-up, I was thinking about XYZ, and I believe that we might need to think about ABC, right? Okay. So this is your stating of the problem. Okay. S is when you're actually going to start solutioning, right? So if they have asked you a question and you have responded, hey, you need new hires last 6 months in our organization. Attached, you'll find the data that I was able to pull for your part of the company. If you need anything else, let me know, right? Okay. So this is where we answer. It could be, hey, we've only had 2 new hires over the last 6 months. I've listed them both below. It's also where if you're asking for something from somebody else, you're going to outline the context of what you think the solution is you're looking for. So, hey, I need the data for this. That was when we stated the problem. I'm hoping that we can get these field elements. I'm hoping that we can get it over a 6-month period. This is where you're going to provide extra context. All right. You're going to start answering and solutioning with the other person. Then the last step is you're going to extol. So this is the second big step that people miss. You are going to then say, thank you so much. Please let me know if you need anything else. Or really appreciate you working out. Or, hey, I understand you have a lot more context in this area. If there's something that I'm missing, please let me know. Okay. This is when you're going to make sure that they know that if they answer you, you're thankful for them. And if you're answering them, that you want to be a good partner and provide what they need. This is a key step to building lasting relationships. And I know what everybody listening is going to say. They're going to be like, well, Kendall, my boss just says, yo, I need this. Okay, I know they do. Sometimes it happens. And there will be times in your career where you will send an email. Hey, following up on this, can I please get an answer in today? But for the most part, especially if you're kicking off a new email or you're responding to an initial incoming email, these are the types of things that nobody teaches us that build much stronger relationships. And I teach this to everybody who works for me. And I can tell you, I've had people sit on emails and they're like, wow, that was a really great email you just sent. I'm like, thank you. I followed the template. And they're like, oh, you did. Right? It helps, right? Especially if you're getting feedback that you need to work on your communication, follow that template every single time. It's 2 extra minutes in writing your email and it will change the way you're perceived across the organization. All right, so you've mastered meeting etiquette, calendar etiquette. You've mastered writing and responding to emails. All right, so the next piece is networking. Building your social skill of networking is key. All right, and there's some important rules that I'm going to share with you. These are components that are going to be in my book that's coming out in November. But again, things nobody teaches you that you have to know if you want to continue to be successful. So the first is your network must extend beyond your own team. If you come into my program, and many people do, and they say, I have really great relationships with my boss and my peers. I'm like, great, who else do you know in your company? And everybody is like silent. This is a very common response that I get because we think the people immediate to us have the most influence over us. And that's not true. Now, your boss does have a large measure of influence over you. Their boss has a large measure of influence over you. But there are other leaders in the organization who probably actually have more of a say than either of your direct reports. So when you think of networking, it cannot just be within your own team. It must be across your organization or your company. The big pushback that I get from people when I share this is, but I don't know anybody. I've never met them. Very, very, very rarely will you reach out to somebody in your company and have them say, no, I don't want to meet with you. Like, I have been coaching people over 7 years now. I've heard of it happening max 2 or 3 times ever. Most of the time, if you reach out to somebody in your organization and say, hey, I heard from so-and-so that you are great at X. Would you be open to having a 15-minute coffee chat with me? They're going to say yes. If they're new to the organization, that's my favorite. Hi, I saw you're new to the organization. Can we set up 15 minutes to connect? I'd love to talk to you and get to know you. When people join my team, I have a list of 40 people that they have to meet with one-on-one by the end of their first 90 days. And this is to help them build that expansive network. This is to help them build those relationships so that later when they go to those people and they say, hey, I need something, they already know them. They don't have to backtrack and be like, hi, I'm Kendall. Here's what I do for the company. Please give me data, right? We've already got that pre-established connection. So when you think of networking, it has to extend beyond your own team. That is step number 1. If you're struggling with this, ask your boss, hey, who are 3 people across the company that you think I should know? Give them a specific number, specific task, and then go meet with those people. You can also join mentorship circles. You can also join book clubs. There's all kinds of ERGs, communities that exist across most companies that you can leverage in order to expand your network, but it must expand beyond your own team. The second rule is that without a network, you're going to fail in your career. I'm sorry. Nobody likes this one because we like to believe that work is a strict meritocracy. If we do a good job, if we show up on time, if we deliver the technical aspect of our work, we should get promoted, we should be successful, we should make more money. That won't happen. Every single company that I've ever worked for does some version of cross calibrations. Every time I talk to somebody in a small company, they're like, my company doesn't do that. Yes, they do. It may not be formal, but they do it. A cross calibration is an exercise where all of the leaders at a certain seniority level sit in a room and they evaluate the performance of all of the individuals in their teams and they compare them against one another. I'm not saying this is the right way to do it. I'm just saying this is what most companies do. Okay. And in that room, you need stakeholders who like you. Nobody wants to work with people they don't like. I don't want to work with people I don't like. I'm going to be honest. There are some people I work with that I don't like that I can still work with. But for the most part, it's a lot easier for me to work with people I do like. Your leadership is the same way. Do not have a double standard. Quick aside, do not have a double standard. That you are allowed to dislike people and not want to work with them, but your boss is not. That's not fair. This is the biggest double standard I see in corporate. I don't like so-and-so. They don't do this. How dare this person say they don't like me? I hear it all the time. Don't have that double standard. Be self-aware. Sometimes it just sucks, right? Back on topic. When you think of the people that are going to sit in that room, you need people who are willing to advocate for you. Your biggest mistake is thinking that your boss is even in that room. Unless your boss is a director or higher, and even then there are lots of cases where the directors are not in the room, your boss is probably not even in that conversation. They're taking notes on your performance that they give to their boss, that gives to their boss, that gives to their boss, who gives to their boss who sits in that room. You are 4 levels removed from the person who's actually talking about the work that you're doing. expecting that your manager is sitting in all these calls is not realistic. Now, I have worked for companies where they do. So I'm going to give a shout out on this call. I worked for Capital One a long time. If you look me up on LinkedIn, you'll see it. At that company specifically, every single person who managed people sat in the cross calibrations for their people. I think that's a great way to do it. I'm going to be honest. I think that's how all companies should do it. But I have worked for many more companies where you don't. So you need a network. You need your boss telling their boss 4 levels up. You need a relationship with their boss. You need a relationship with somebody else who's more senior in another division who's telling their boss how great they think you are. You need somebody else in a different division who's telling their boss. You need these people at this level to know who you are. All right. There are other companies I've worked for that do heat maps. Green if you know this person really well. Yellow if you know them a little bit. Red if you don't know them at all. And directors and above will literally fill out a heat map and say how well they know you. How many greens would you get? Your goal is to be green across the board. Now, the first time I ever sat through a heat map exercise, I was one of 2 people in the company who got all greens. Now, I am very intentional with my networking, with my relationship building. It is a key part of how I am successful in my career. This does not mean you have to be a suck up. This does not mean you have to be inauthentic. This does not mean you're being fake. It means you're being strategic. Okay, so your relationship has to exist beyond your own team. And without your network, you're going to fail. Nobody is going to represent you in that room. You're going to get 3s across the board, meets expectations forever. You're never going to need a raise. You're never going to need a promotion. And you're going to be constantly frustrated as to why. And the reason is that you do not have relationships in that room who are advocating for you. That's what it comes down to. So we've talked about the network and why it's important. We've talked about the jump that it will allow you to make. We've talked about where your network needs to be. Now let's get tactical. How do you build a network? This is the part everybody struggles with. How do I know who to talk to? What do I talk to them about? I don't want to talk to people, especially virtual. And it's interesting, if you guys follow Corporate Natalie, she did an episode on her podcast talking about networking in a virtual environment and how much harder it is. And it is. But we're going to cover both. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to build what I call an influencer list. So if you're on my mailing list, the email that went out on March 8th has the template for the influencer list. Okay, if you're not on my mailing list, you should be on my mailing list. But also, I'm going to talk you through how to build one. So first is you're going to open an Excel doc, and in the first column, you're going to put the names of people you know in your company who you think are influential. All right? They do not have to be people you know. They don't have to be people you've talked to, but they're names you recognize that you know this person has a good reputation, or this person, everybody knows who they are. This person works on really cool stuff, or this person got promoted 3 times in 3 years. Like, who are the influential people in your company? Second, you're going to put their title just so you remember who they are. And then you're going to label a few columns. So the first column is going to be a fear factor. Do they scare you? And this is not they scare me like I have to go have a conversation with them and I'm scared about it. No, this is the type of person who, if they didn't like you, you would be fired. They evoke fear across the organization. Leadership may be afraid of them. This is a legitimate number. Now, most people should not get a score in this box. They should get a 1. We're going to score everything 1 to 5. They should get a 1. They're not scary. But people who do evoke that fear factor, they're going to get a 5. It's rare, but you'll know them when you put them on the list. Second column is going to be seniority. If they're more senior than you, they get a 5. If they're the same level as you, they get a 3. If they're more junior than you, they get a 1. All right. Next is going to be risk. This is kind of a risk reward evaluation. If you meet with them, how big is the risk that they don't like you? 5 if the risk is high, 1 if the risk is low. The next is going to be power. So how much power do they have in the company? So CEO is going to be 5. All C-suite is going to be 5, right? Maybe a director and above is a 5. But you're going to know the people who are maybe the same seniority as you, but when they talk, everybody listens. If they have an idea, everybody goes and does it. They get a 5. They have power, right? 3 is they're at about the same level as you. 1 is they don't have any power at all. Nobody listens to them. There will be people with 1s, right? Next is going to be exposure. Exposure is, does having a relationship with this person get you exposure that could help your career? So this could be a couple different things. So exposure could be they're a leader of an organization you would one day like to work in. Exposure could mean that they present very often to senior executives and you want that type of exposure. It could be that they are a senior executive and it is exposure to have a relationship with them. 5 for yes, they give me more exposure. 1 for no, they don't. Right? Next is going to be validation. So if they were to validate you in your position, does it help your career? They were to walk into a room and say, Kendall's great. She does her job well. Does it help you? 5 if yes, 1 if no. And last is going to be future. So the last column stands for your future. So this means that knowing them helps your future growth. This is either somebody who sits in that cross-calibration room or somebody who is the leader of a team you might one day want to work on. 5 if yes, 1 if no. Right? So once you have all those scores, you're going to add them all up and you're going to stack rank your most important people. Then you're going to take anybody who is 3 levels more senior than you out of the list and put them in a separate tab. Okay, so if you're a director and your CEO is on your list, you're going to move them to a separate tab. Doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with the CEO. We want to keep them in mind, but depending on the bureaucracy and the structure of your organization, that may just not be feasible. So they get in a separate tab. So whoever's left in your main tab, who's within 3 levels of your seniority, who has their score, who's ranked high, the top 5 people on that list, you're going to schedule one-on-one coffee chats with each of them in the next 60 days, starting today. Start a countdown. You do 1 a week, whatever. 5 people. In those one-on-ones, you have a few goals. So 1 is you want to pick something that person is good at that you want to learn. Are they great at presenting? Are they great at communication? Are they great at leadership? Are they a great boss? What are they great at? And how do you get information from them? Studies have shown that the people we teach things to, we actually think of more fondly than the people who teach things to us. Give them a chance to teach you. Okay? So what's something they're good at that they can help you with? Second is you want to build a personal relationship. Please do not go into a coffee chat and go, my name is Kendall. My title is X. I do ABC for my company and I work for so-and-so. And I'd like to work for you in the future. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Okay. You want to build a personal relationship. Hey, I've heard a lot about you since joining the firm. You have a really good reputation. I'd love to just get to know you a little bit more. Will you tell me some about your background? So they tell you about your background. You want to return the favor. Thanks. So I'm married. I have 2 kids. On the weekends, I love to go hiking. I am really passionate about this thing that I do at work. And fun fact, I run a podcast on the side. Isn't that cool? Personal relationship. We're going to build personal relationship here. Okay. And then your third goal and objective of this call is to say your elevator pitch and offer to help them. Okay. At the end of the call, at some point, they're going to say, well, what do you do for the company? Or like, why don't you tell me a little bit more about your role? Have your elevator pitch ready. My elevator pitch is I'm the person that you put in a black hole where you don't know what's going on and you know you need a solution. And what I've been able to do is really build good cross-functional relationships that allow me to problem solve and organize areas and get results for the company quickly. And I'm really passionate about building the next generation of leaders. And I enjoy leading large cross-functional teams. That's my elevator pitch. That's who I am. I'm never going to say my title and the last 3 things I delivered. It's not valuable to them. I'm going to tell them what I'm good at. You know what you're good at and you need to communicate it well. So you're going to communicate what you're good at. And at the end of the call, you're going to say, listen, if there's ever anything I can help you with, if you ever need anything from my side of the world, please let me know. I'd be happy to step in. Build that ongoing relationship. If you really connect with this person, if you really like them, the conversation is natural, it flows really well, you end up enjoying it more than you think you will, then say, hey, would you mind continuing to meet with me on let's say a quarterly basis just to stay in touch? They're going to say yes. Everybody says yes. Now you've got that ongoing relationship for that person who's going to be in that room, for that person who's got influence. The objective of this is going to keep your relationships warm. And if that person were to have a position come available, they're going to think of you. They're going to call you. They're going to want to know if you're interested. And that's going to help you propel that career forward. Plus, if they're in a meeting and people are talking about your promotion, they think you're awesome. And they're going to say, oh, well, Kendall's great. She should definitely get promoted. It doesn't matter if he doesn't work with you. Now he's got a voice. Okay. So these are all the important things in networking. That's kind of that first call. Then once you've picked out something that they are good at or something that you guys have in common, that's what you're going to talk about on the future calls. Hey, I've noticed you're really good at presentations. I have a presentation coming up. Would you mind just spending 10 minutes walking through it with me and giving me some tips on how to present? It's free help. And they're going to propel your career forward. And they're going to think of you fondly because they helped you. These are all good things that you're going to get out of it. All right. So build that network. It is so key. Now, what to do if you go into that conversation and it is awkward and you hate it? We're not going to resonate with everybody. Everybody is not going to run on the same frequency as us. We're not going to walk out of every conversation like, oh my gosh, that was amazing, my new best friend. It's just not going to happen. It doesn't happen in real life. It won't happen at work. When that happens, do not force yourself to keep meeting with them every month and having a chat. It's not going to be good. In the end, you're going to end up doing something stupid. You're going to end up rescheduling them all and it's going to fall apart anyways. But if they are high influencer, the top 3 on your list, you still want to meet with them at least twice a year. That could be in person if you're going into the office. That could be at a dinner if you do an offsite, twice a year minimum. And that's just going to be to maintain a somewhat existing relationship. But you don't want to kill yourself, put yourself in awkward positions really frequently. It's not worth it. If you do this, the top 5 people on your list, let's say you connect with 3 of them and you're meeting with them quarterly, I will promise you this will rapidly accelerate your career. I had a client who worked with me, really great individual, came into the program. We figured out what their brand was. We figured out where their areas of growth were. And I said, great, I need you to go network. And he said, absolutely not. I don't want to. And I was like, yeah, it's not really optional. We have to network. So we built a networking plan, went out, first 3 calls, comes back and is like, I have learned more in the last 2 weeks about how my company operates than I have in the last 2 years. You will learn so much about your company, about the teams, about opportunities for your progression and your growth. It is worth it, even if you don't like it. So spend time, build your network. The other side of this is if you have a network from people you previously worked with or friends of a friend on networks, we see this a lot on LinkedIn. Most people will wait until they need a job and then they start reaching out to everybody they've ever known on LinkedIn. Hey, how are you? How's your job? How are you doing? And it's awkward because then we're like, can you give me a job? It's not comfy. So pick people who are influential over your course of your career, write them down, make a repeating invite in your calendar on your phone or put them in your agenda or whatever it is that you do and message them a couple times a year. My first hiring manager out of college, it's a long time ago, first hiring manager out of college, he and I thought very similarly about problems. It was a really good relationship. We were both really targeted on what we were trying to accomplish, where we wanted to go with our careers. We were both C-suite potential. And I worked for him a long time ago, and we still talk probably 2 or 3 times a year. In fact, we talked 4 weeks ago. And I was like, hey, I saw you got a new role. Love to connect with you, have some coffee, chat about it, virtually, of course. And we did. And he's like, hey, I saw your podcast. Seems like it's going really well. It has been decades since we worked together and we still keep in contact. And every 4 or 5 years, he'll be like, hey, I have a role for you. Any chance you're looking? Every 4 or 5 years, I'll be like, hey, I heard of something through the grapevine you might be a good fit for. Thought I'd put in a referral for you if you're interested. We have that type of relationship where if tomorrow I lost my job and I needed something, he would be my first call. You need to maintain. Now, you don't have to maintain with every person you've ever worked with, but the people who you really connect with, you really like, you really get along with, who have similar goals and trajectories as yourself, absolutely keep in touch with them. Those are going to be the people who long-term you may need for a job rec or for something new. So this is a lot of advice about how to build your network. This is a lot of advice about how to build relationships, how to build those social skills. We could do a whole nother episode about the opposite side of social skills, which is kind of the negative aspect. But one last thing that I'll leave you guys with is if you have a coworker who you have a really strained relationship with, it's really complicated, really difficult, you don't like working with them, I would start your one-on-ones with them. And I know you don't want to. I don't want to either. But when I have difficulties, I almost always find that if I carve time to talk to this person one-on-one, the conversation usually goes fine. We are all inherently selfish in our careers. We're all focused on what we're trying to accomplish, what our boss is yelling at us to do, what's our next deadline, that we don't always think about how stressful it could be for somebody else. And when negative emotions come through on meetings, we tend to hold that against the person on a personal level, even though it's not intended that way. So if you are facing some of these difficulties, have a one-on-one. Hey, we've been working together a lot lately. I just wanted to connect and see, is there anything I need to be doing for you? Do you have any feedback for me? How are your kids? Chat about topics that are neutral ground. Build that relationship. I promise you it will help you on those meetings that are more tense because you've got that pre-existing relationship. All right. So this is it for today's episode. Hopefully you guys found it helpful and you're able to start applying these tips in your daily life, hopefully like in an hour. If you like today's episode, please rate it 5 stars. Feel free to comment below on any of your networking wins or successes or any other topics that you'd like to have in future episodes. Otherwise, we will see you back next week for our next episode.